Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's another CSFL podcast, and you'll probably notice by the new logo and the new design, we have had a slight rebrand over the off season. We are now the CSFL kickoff show. First episode of our new branding. It's what a better way to start it than to begin by looking at the season previews. And there's nobody better in our league, our universe of breaking down the different conferences than our very own Green Bay Packers GM Zach, who provides a pretty amazing summary, overview, prediction sheet for each season. Zach, welcome very much to the show. It's good to have you back to have a look at the AFC conference this time.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here and ready to get the season started, and it should be an interesting season once again.
Cool, great, good stuff. So let's just dive straight in, shall we, and have a little look. We've obviously got your preview sheet here that we'll bring up, and yeah, let's get straight into it and work our way through the AFC, and then bring back to your predictions, which were actually incredibly accurate last year. I don't know if you have to hand how accurate you were, but I think you came pretty close with a lot of your predictions in terms of results and standings.
Yeah, well, I was really hoping at the end of the year to see the Lions and Ravens win the AFC and AFC title. That would have really helped my predictions even more. But still pretty happy with how last season went as far as predictions. And this season probably will be even tougher with the new engine and everything. But it's always fun to try and see how close I can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you said, it's a good point to start off with probably the AFC North Division and the Baltimore Ravens, who you highlighted in the first team here in this division. Do you want to just give us a bit of a breakdown of the Ravens and the rest of the AFC North, and then we can bring it back to a little summary?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that when you look at the AFC North as a whole, I mean, I think the Ravens are by far the favorites here. I think there's still a pretty big gap between them and any other team. I think it kind of went under the radar last year, at least in my eyes. I know they have an amazing defense. If you look at that defensive line, it has to be one of the best in the league. But this offense was every bit as good as their defense last year. And I don't really see any reason why that won't continue this coming season. They ranked third in points scored and points against. One of the few teams in the league that's top 5 in both of those categories. So, I mean, when you look at the Browns and everyone else in this division, I think this is still the Ravens to take this year, but anything can happen. This is a really good roster up and down, and Flacco really played well last year, so I was kind of surprised how well he did. So, yeah, I don't know if you see something else in this division I don't see, but I think this is going to be the Ravens to take.
No, I mean, I pretty much agree with you with this division. I think the Ravens have stepped up in a sort of a little bit of a bubble in this division, really. When you look at the performance from last year, the development, the players they've added, they're going on sort of strength to strength, really. I mean, for me, I think the really interesting thing about this division is probably the other teams that are involved in this division, to be honest. If you take away the Ravens, probably taking the division quite comfortably. I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of you've got the Browns, you've got the Packers, and then you've obviously got the Bengals in this division, kind of all in sort of similar positions, but for different reasons, really, in my opinion. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, the Browns are kind of, for lack of a better term, maybe a little boring. And I mean, what I mean by that is just that they rank pretty average in most categories. It's not really a bad or a good thing. And they didn't do a lot in the offseason. The good news for them, though, is they should play a lot of close games. So if they can find a way to just kind of squeak out some wins here and there that maybe they shouldn't, then I could easily see them threaten for that wild card in the AFC. I don't think it's that crazy of a thought. I mean, I don't love their roster, but it's not bad either. So I think they are still a step above. They don't really have the question marks that the Steelers and Bengals do in my eyes. So I still think they're a step above them. But Steelers and Bengals, I think you could kind of swap either way. I think there's a lot of people that probably much higher on the Bengals than I am. They're ranked 32nd in points scored last year, which I just they do have Earl Thomas this season, but I'm not sure. I just have some real question marks about their defense. I mean, they were just really atrocious last season. So if they can get that to be a bit more average, then it could be a pretty good season for the Bengals, though. And then the Steelers, they just lost so much; it's so hard to predict. I mean, they still have Roethlisberger; he was hurt some last year, so I think that's really their only positive they have. Everything else is, I think their defense. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, they lost Woodley, the linebacker, and Troy Polamalu, so that's gonna be a tough hit. At least they get Roethlisberger. If they get him for 16 games, that'll help a little bit. But I don't. It's going to be pretty tough for them to do anything more than 6 or 7 wins in my eyes.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. So I mean, just running through, I mean, I kind of agree with your assessment of the Browns. The boring assessment is actually, whilst I laughed at it, was probably the right assessment. They are the boring Browns. They're the 0.500 Browns in my opinion at the moment, which B Gorilla, if he's what listens to this later, probably laugh. We went from being, at the start of our CSFL, league, they were probably the worst team in terms of roster capability. They bounced massively because people learning the game. B Gorilla's an experienced veteran, looked like a really solid playoff team, and they've kind of just treadmilled recently, which is really interesting. And that's kind of where I see the Browns. For me, I think this is the season that the Bengals go above the Steelers, and they might not necessarily make the wild card slot, but I think this is the season. They're 2 really good acquisitions in the offseason. The roster's starting to take a bit of shape there. BioEagle, the GM, is starting to build a bit of a talent pool there. And for me, the biggest question mark in this division is the Steelers. Just because, as you said, Zach, the talent loss they had is, they've been completely decimated on both sides of the ball, really, when you look at it. And I think that whilst Roethlisberger will be back and hopefully will be healthy for 16 games, I just don't think that's going to be enough to see them coming out at the bottom of that division.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If I kind of had a redo here, not really necessarily a redo, but I could see the Bengals definitely making that next jump here. I had some big question marks on their defense, but at the same token, it can't be any worse than last year. So there's definitely room for some easy improvement there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just in terms of recapping, I guess we're kind of in agreement, but I think you're sort of saying Ravens are going to be comfortably above. Then you've got the Browns, then the Steelers, and kind of the Bengals, all in similar record positions by the looks of it here. So could be a bit of a mismatch, a bit of a running around to get the empty seat kind of thing for the second slot in this division.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be the Ravens who are going to challenge for that 1 seed, but I don't know if this division really is going to get another playoff team in there. I mean, I think the Browns could potentially, but I still think even if I do give the Bengals a bit of a jump, I don't see them making a playoff push this season. So could be a little bit of a down year for the division as a whole, but we'll see.
Yeah. Was there anything when you looked at the American North, just in terms of the rosters, in terms of the franchises, that surprised you at all? That you didn't necessarily notice until you looked in a bit more detail?
I think I kind of hit on it a little bit. The Ravens. I don't know why. I think reputation-wise, I just remember how good their defensive line is. I think of it. Maybe it's because of real life. I don't know, but I think of it as such a good defensive team. But I was surprised just how good their offense was last year. I think that was a bit. I mean, Flacco had 30 touchdowns. I mean, this passing offense was one. I mean, I think they led the league in passing touchdowns. And then they still have Peterson running the ball. So I was just surprised how good this offense was. I think maybe it's just me. I don't know, but it seems like it kind of flew under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a fair assessment, and I think adding to that Peterson, providing sort of the rushing yards for them, adding the likes of Welker and LaFell are huge additions for them. Getting a better tackle in probably going to mean their passing game is only going to go from strength to strength, which is quite a scary prospect if you are looking to contend with teams like this Ravens roster, really.
Yeah, I think with this division, I think 12 wins might be even a little low, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had 13 wins last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they repeat that and may even push for something more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I'm sure we'll come back to the Ravens when we look at playoff decisions, championship contenders possibly in your predictions here. But let's move on to the American East, is the next one you've got up here. So yeah, what's your take on this one? It was last season, it was certainly a bit of a topsy-turvy year for this division. The Patriots kind of lost that edge, I feel, that they've had the other couple of seasons. Do you feel this is continuing? Do you think the Patriots are coming back on top? Where do you see this one playing out?
This is probably one of the more confusing divisions to kind of get my hands around. There's two teams in this division I think are kind of hard to figure out, and that's the Patriots and the Dolphins, which I'll get into a little bit more in detail later. But I mean, the Patriots, I mean, when you look at the roster, they have one of the best rosters in the league, still, even with, the loss of Will Fork. But I mean, this is one of the more complete rosters and more talented. So you sit there and it's hard to see them losing the division, but it seems like they have underperformed a little bit, as they've kind of been joked around a little bit. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't meet their expectations of 13-3 just because they haven't in the past. But still, though, I think this roster can get it done. The Jets, I really like the Jets. They're a little bit all offense, so then their defense lacks a little bit. They don't really have the complete roster the Patriots do. And then the Dolphins, I think, are kind of hard to figure out. They're kind of like the Patriots, and they have one of the best, really one of the better rosters in the league, to be honest, but it just hasn't really translated into wins.
Yeah, and then obviously you've got finally the Bills as well.
Yeah, the Bills are. They've made a lot of moves this offseason as far as acquisitions and departures, but I don't know if it's really helped them much. I mean, there's a lot of good players going out and coming in, so I think they'll be pretty much the same as last year, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back up to the top then. So we talked a little bit about the Patriots at the beginning and sort of saying it's one of the best rosters in the league. It hasn't quite transitioned for them, apart from the first season where they made the Super Bowl. They've not got back to those heights again. When you looked at them, and you obviously looked at the roster, is it really a coaching issue, a coaching challenge for this team, do you feel, or are there other sort of holes that might not necessarily be seen when you just look at the roster and look at the structure of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can diagnose the issue or not, but I think the offense maybe lacks a little bit in what they could be. I kind of hit on it a little bit in the preview, but I think they're ranked 29th in pass attempts. They have Russell Wilson. I think the interesting thing about that is I don't know if this is the right move or not, but maybe kind of letting him kind of air it out more, see if that kind of helps the offense take the next step. The only problem with that is they don't really have the wide receivers to do that. So I don't know if that's going to work or not, but I think they may need to kind of let Russell Wilson kind of air it out a little bit more this season, see if that works. They have the talent to be a top 5 offense, I think, but they really haven't gotten there as a unit in the past. This defense ranked 5th in points against last year, so I don't think that's a problem. I think it's really the offense kind of holds them back just a bit. Yeah,
absolutely. Still maybe it's still a hangover from the lack of not having Tom Brady the past couple of seasons, and trying to develop a rookie quarterback in Russell Wilson has kind of hindered them back a little bit there. And then you've obviously got the Jets, who are, last year were knocked through the door, really. You've got them sort of knocking on that door again to try and take this division. You said you like the Jets because they're very good on offense. Defense is another question. Do you think they can make the step up this year in terms of being a comfortable playoff team, or is that defense still holding them back?
Yeah, I think it really kind of depends on the Patriots. If the Patriots reach their potential, I think the Jets are still a step back. But I mean, if the Patriots aren't what we think they could be, then this is a very winnable division. When you look at the Jets, I mean, there's not many offenses better than this one. They added D'Angelo Williams to running back. They already had, between Matt Ryan and Braylon Edwards, probably one of the better passing attacks in the league. I think they ranked 3rd in passing yards or 4th in passing yards per attempt and 3rd in touchdowns last season. So they're aired out better than anyone. When you look at this defense, though, it's very predicated on the 2 players really, and that's Revis, and then I forget the name. I'm drawing a blank on the linebacker. I think it's Harris. Could be wrong on that though, but they have.
Yes, it is
they
Harris.
Have two,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they have 2 star players on defense, but that's really it. This could be one of the. I mean, they did okay last year as far as defense, but there are some worries there for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's move on. So then we've obviously got the Dolphins, a team that you mentioned there has a lot of talent now. Similar to the Patriots, maybe have not quite put that talent in terms of record so far. Do you think this is the turning point this season? I mean, looking at your grades you've got down here, awesome defense. Offense is a little bit patchy in some areas. Maybe the quarterback is the challenge. What's your take on the Dolphins?
Yeah, that's a storyline for this offseason was they moved on from Alex Smith. I don't know if that was the plan or if they just got outbid in free agency. I'm not really too sure, but for whatever the reason, they moved on. So it's interesting to see if this team can. They have the defense to be top 5, so I mean I think they could still be really good if they kind of go ball control, kind of run the ball, play good defense, that type of thing. They could be really good, but. I had this team pegged as a playoff team last season, and they played okay for most of the season. Then they lost the last 4 games, one against the Falcons and one against the Bengals, and just didn't play well at all. So, like I said, this team kind of confuses me a little bit. I'm not really too sure what to make. I don't know if they're the team that lost their last 4 games or if they're the team that played pretty well before that and has one of the league's best defenses. I'm not really sure what team we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at their acquisitions, I mean, the quarterback story for the Miami Dolphins is the big storyline for that franchise. Certainly, losing Alex Smith is a question mark, and we don't know the detail of whether it's, as you said, outbid or not. Now they're going to have to rely on Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, who is a questionable starter, I'd probably say, in this league. And when you look at the departures and acquisitions here, it's quite clear that they've tried to address some of the departures that they had at tight end and at cornerback, managed to get in another elite veteran linebacker in Keith Brookin, who I had last year is underrated in my opinion. But that quarterback position, for me, feels like that's going to be the thing that's going to hinder this Dolphins team if they don't try and bring someone in this season.
I agree, and I do want to give a shout out though. They did have a great signing in Rondé Barber. It's only 1 year; he's older, but I think they got him for $3.5 million, which is a real bargain.
Yeah, certainly one of the top 10 cornerbacks still in this league on a bargain deal is nothing to be sniffed at.
Yeah, I went after him pretty hard this offseason, so I was offered more money than that. So that was a real steal for them. So he should be a good addition for that secondary for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, and then we obviously talked at the end about the Bills. Lots of acquisitions, as you said. Not sure on the makeup of this team. Is this a case of the team not necessarily looking good on paper, but maybe the strategy is going to bring this team forward, or is it a case of both not necessarily matching? And the Bills are probably going to be down the bottom of this American East again this year. What was your take on it?
I don't think it's a strategy issue. I think this is more of a roster issue. So I think they did pretty well. I mean, getting 4 wins last year, in all honesty, was actually pretty good season considering the talent they were dealing with compared to other teams. I think the big hit this year is they lost Joe Thomas. This might be one of the worst offensive lines in the league. So they don't really have the talent on offense to make up for a bad offensive line. So that's my think. I think they may get more than 2 wins, but I don't see how they get more than 5 with the current roster. They have some pretty rough contracts on the books right now, so that's kind of holding them hostage a little bit as far as what they can do until those contracts kind of fall off.
Yeah, I mean there was a bright spark in this offseason in the Aaron Hernandez signing. There was a lot of teams competing for him, and they managed to pick him up. And I'm going to be interested to see how the likes of Tebow and Hernandez, how they operate as an offensive unit, because you've kind of got an elite wide receiver, tight end player now. With Tebow coming back, with the fact that the Bills GM can also use a playbook this year because he's not on a playbook restriction. this is the team, the team in the whole of the CSFL. I have no idea how they're going to perform. I just
I actually I totally forgot about the playoff or the playbook restriction. So
yeah, I mean
good point.
they did excellent, as you said, to win 4 games last year, considering they couldn't run a playbook. And this team for me could either win 2 games or it could win 9 games. I just, when I look at the roster, I don't understand the structure, but probably because I don't understand the playbook or the strategy that Tosi's going to use for this team. And we haven't necessarily seen that come through last season. So biggest question mark for me, I'm not sure about you, whether you agree with that, but interesting.
Yeah, I don't see 9 wins, but I definitely do think they could get to 6 or 7. I think 9 might be a little much in my eyes, but when you kind of do the roster grades and kind of looking, obviously it's a little bit geared towards overall ratings, and sometimes that's not the perfect calculation, but they grade pretty bad in those. Can we kind of look at rankings as far as that?
Yeah,
that always kind of pulls them down. So
sure. So I mean, yeah, in terms of your overview for this division, I mean, you've got the Patriots probably coming out on top. It looks like here, quite comfortably. It looks like with 13 or so wins. You then kind of got a bit of a fight between the Jets and the Dolphins in this sort of middle pack. I'd be interested to understand why you've put the Jets above the Dolphins in coming through in sort of that second position.
I think it's more just to do with history. I think that the Jets have kind of played better last year, and I have a little more confidence that they can do it again this year. I think if you just look at rosters, I think the Dolphins are just as good as the Jets. I don't think it's a roster thing, but I'm just kind of going off more historical success and actually getting wins with the roster. I have more faith in the Jets. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Okay, cool. That's interesting to understand. And then obviously we talked about the Bills being down the bottom. So let's move on to the American South. First up you've got the Titans, but interested to get your breakdown of all the teams in this division. Titans have held this division since the beginning of the CSFL. Is that grip loosening, do you feel? What's your breakdown on the American South?
Yeah, I mean, if the grip is loosening a little bit, it has nothing to do with the Titans. I'll say that. I think the Colts and Jaguars this is the story of this division. It's probably the deepest division by far, as far as 1 through 4. I think it's maybe the best division in football. And then if you add in, and the other storyline in this division is schedules. They have to double check before I get it wrong, but yeah, they have to play the NFC North. So they got everybody in this division has to play the Packers, and that's the Packers and the Lions. And then on top of that, they have tough division opponents. So they got 6 games they have to play against tough division opponents, and add in the NFC North. So that every single team in this division, I think, ranks as like top 5 in strength of schedule. So that's really the storyline here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with your assessment there that this is the toughest division in the CSFL. It absolutely is. I think you've got 4 GMs who are incredibly active and incredibly knowledgeable about the game, and that's pretty clear. We talk about the Colts, the Jags, and the Texans and Titans all together, but if you take the fact that the Jags have always had a top defense, the Titans have obviously won 2 Super Bowls. The Colts GM is really well known in the college game of our sort of sister league, I guess, for having a really good offense. And then the Texans GM had a really good offseason last year, and I think followed that up this year. But yeah, I mean, what's your take? So let's start with the Titans then. You've got them as sort of still taking this South Division, where Super Bowl champions coming off the back. Business as normal for this team.
Yeah, it was a pretty quiet off season, which for some teams it's not good, but when you're coming off a Super Bowl, that's usually a good thing. They lost Reggie Wayne, which for a lot of teams that would be a huge loss. But when you have the wide receivers they have in front of him, and the team isn't really, I mean, obviously passing is always important, but I mean, this team runs the ball so well. They play such good defense that, and they already have such good wide receivers. A loss of Wayne doesn't really hurt them, I don't think, at least not in a significant manner. So for any other team, this would be a big loss, but I don't see it hurting them any. And when you look at their roster grades, they really don't grade out all that well. But obviously, if you just look at their success, they get the most out of that roster more than probably any other team. So well, I think when you kind of look at overall ratings, it doesn't really do this roster justice. They put players in the right position to succeed, and they ranked first in points last year and second in points against, which kind of really tells you everything you need to know about this team.
Yeah, exactly. When I look at this team, if I had to do an analogy or a comparison to any sport, I would compare them probably to the likes of the San Antonio Spurs, in the fact that on paper they don't have the best roster and they never have had the best roster, but for some reason it seems to work. They get it going, and they always end up being a top 1 or top 2 team on offense and defense, and that's the way it's been for this team since I think the second season. So. Yeah, I agree with your assessment. Business as normal, not really lost a lot in Reggie Wayne. Added Dallas Clark, which is probably a nice little bonus. Yeah, probably taking this division is what I think we're saying here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're the favorites. They got knocked down 1 win from 14 to 13, but again, that's more the schedule than anything. They have the second projected strength of schedule this season, so I can see them maybe not getting. I mean, I don't think it's crazy that they may not get a bye this season. Just because of how tough the schedule is. But still, I think they're probably the best team in the conference in my eyes, as far as just projected talent or how well they'll do.
Yeah, I agree. And then we move on to the remaining 3 teams, as you said, in this tough division. You have the Colts listed next. Do you want to give us a little bit of a breakdown of where you see the Colts to be? It looks like you're seeing them making a progression from last year, but interested to understand why you think that.
Yeah, so they won 11 games last year. They're projected 11 this year, which is probably actually a jump up considering the tougher schedule. I really, really like this offense. Even with Manning gone, he didn't really play all that well last year anyway, so I don't know how big of a loss it is or not. But Alex Smith comes in now. This grades out as one of the better offenses in the league. I think they did 12th in points scored last year. I think they could even be better this year. And then the defense is really kind of the question. The secondary still looks like it lacks what it may need to be a title contender. I don't think they're far off, but I think the secondary is still kind of limiting this team just a bit from that kind of taking that next step in my eyes. That's really the only question mark they have that I see. But I think they're still going to get a wild card spot. I still favor them over the Jags. I mean, it's extremely close. It's not really.
Yeah, that's the really interesting talking point in this American South and your preview here, is that it's always traditionally been the Titans, the Jags, who've been very close, and then the Colts, and then the Texans, who have fallen away because of previous GMs, really. Got the Colts slightly ahead here. Offense looks amazing. Defense is the question mark, which has always been the case with the Colts. But you've got that offense is probably going to carry them through this year, is what you're saying. But the question mark is that why have the Jags dropped off so much? And what's your assessment for that?
Yeah, I mean, they're still projected 10 wins. I mean, I think the drop off, picking the Jags third is probably one of the hardest things I had to do in this preview. I think I did it last year too, though. I'm not too sure. I can't remember. But the point is, I don't see them as a bad team at all. I think they're one of the more dangerous teams in this league. It's just this division is so tough. And then you look at their schedule, and it's again, it's just so tough. I don't like projecting them as 10 wins, but someone has to be third in this division. So it's kind of
yeah. There's always going to be one that unfortunately falls out, and then probably the most competitive division in the league. So
yeah. So I mean, in a vacuum, I would probably have them higher. It's just somebody has to be third, and I think I just like the Colts a tad more. I'm not really big on the quarterback play for this team. I still think it seems like the quarterback play is kind of going backwards a little bit. That's kind of the biggest thing when you look at the Jags. They do well. They do great on defense, and they kind of run the ball a lot, and they kind of avoid throwing the ball. But I think that's kind of the only thing holding them back is quarterback play.
Let's just pause there for a minute because I'm interested to understand that, because that was one of the big things I picked up in the review of the AFC conference, and in particular this division, was the statement you kind of articulated around Griffin maybe is not the right quarterback to take this team from being a playoff contender team to being a championship contender. What's your thinking around that? Why do you feel Griffin is not quite good enough to help this team make that next step that it needs to do?
Yeah, I mean, haven't followed his ratings too closely, but I think he's 84 overall now in the game. I think that's a hair above their backup Whitehurst, who's like 83, and Castle, who's 83. So, I mean, he ranks pretty lowly when you look at overall ratings and accuracy and those type of things. I mean, I just don't think he's when you look at the game, I don't think he doesn't seem to be progressing very much for a draft pick, so it's kind of a worry. And when you kind of look at I mean, obviously they're a good team, I don't doubt that, but when you kind of get in the playoffs and you have to beat the teams like the Titans and other teams like that, having a quarterback play like that, I think is kind of limiting them just a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've always said about the Jags in particular is I've kind of given Griffin a pass, simply because he's not had the receiving core to really demonstrate whether he's good or bad. It was just interesting that you said that this year, because for me, Jacoby Ford is a huge pickup for this team. He is a legitimate CSFL wide receiver number one, and this is going to be the real question mark for the Jags, whether with having that elite wide receiver can help elevate Griffin's game to that next level. This would be the big thing I think that will make or break the Jags, not just this season but going forward. Is if Griffin can demonstrate that he can be that elite quarterback with a decent wide receiver. If he can, I think the Jags are instantly overnight a contender, in my opinion. If they can't, then I completely agree with your assessment here. They're probably competing with the Colts for that wild card slot.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you brought up with Ford as the acquisition there. I think it's going to kind of be an interesting case study for the league to see what that does for their offense. Because I mean, if you look on we'll get into the NFC later, but at another time. But the Cardinals, they have Matt Schaub, I believe, at quarterback, and he does not rank well, very similar to the Jags, but they have maybe the two best wide receivers in the game. And last year they ranked, I think, in the top 5 in a lot of passing categories. So
they were, yeah.
It shows, the point being that it shows how much a good wide receiver core can really help out a quarterback. So I think if the Jags do well with Ford, I think it's going to really up the value in the league for getting a wide receiver.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And then we move on to the final team in this division, the Houston Texans. Been at the bottom of this division for a little while now. New GM came in, I think, last off season, made some really good acquisitions. Continue that this season. Where do you feel? Do you feel there's progress for this team, or is it it's a difficult upward ladder in this division anyway? But do you feel they're getting closer to the likes of the Colts and the Jags?
Yeah, I mean, as far as roster talent, they're not as far as maybe their record would suggest, or their projected record, I should say. I think they have one of the better offenses in the league. No, I want to say one of the better ones, but they have a pretty good one, I think. And then their offensive line is kind of holding them back a little bit. I still think they ranked pretty lowly and didn't do very well rushing the ball last season. But when you look at this team, the real story is the hardest strength of schedule. Of course, they have to play the Titans, Jags, and Colts 6 times, and then they have to play the Lions and Packers. This schedule is so tough with the 3 teams they have to play above them 6 times that I don't know if they can get to 8-8. I think it's just going to be so tough. Maybe they have to wait till next season to make the playoffs, but I think they have a pretty good roster though.
Yeah, no, I agree with that assessment. The strength of schedule is just insane for them, and it's a huge upward battle. If you've got to play, 5 teams who are all probably going to win 10 games or more on paper, in your 16 games at least, and then you've got to play, of those 5 teams, you've got to play 3 of them twice. it's pretty insane. We haven't even talked about the fact they've got to play New England, the fact they've got to play Miami and the Jets, who are teams that we all think will be in the playoff hunt. So, yeah, very tough schedule for the Texans, a difficult season expected. But, 5-11 with the number one strength of schedule is not anything to be knocked at in terms of progress.
No, I mean, I think they'll be fine as far as, kind of looking forward long term. But yeah, I think this year might just be so tough. I don't see how they pull it out. But if they manage to do it, then they're obviously going to be well tested for the playoffs.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the American West Division then. The final one in the AFC. This has been a division that, again, since the start of the CSFL time, has always been the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos have always comfortably won this league. Again, I guess the question for you, Zach, is: are the Broncos still miles ahead of all the other teams in this division, or are teams starting to catch them up now?
Short answer is yes. I still think they're miles ahead of their division. I think there are some teams. I'll get into it in a little bit. The Raiders, for one, that I think are definitely headed in the right direction. Unfortunately, they had to start so low that even with heading in the right direction, I don't think they're all that much of a competition this season. But yeah, so I think this is the Broncos are going to be heavy favorites here.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the Broncos because they're on the screen and they're probably going to take this division again. Obviously, again, had an interesting offseason where they lost a lot of talent, but also probably gained a lot of talent on paper. Team is, you've got them projected as making an upward stand here from 10-6 to 14-2. What's your thinking around that jump back to probably being an elite team from where they probably weren't necessarily last year on paper and on record?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of two things. First, this is kind of the opposite of the AFC South in that they go from the 5th strength of schedule last season to the 28th projected strength of schedule this season. I'm not trying to make too much out of schedules, but that's a pretty significant jump as far as trying to look here real quick. I think they play they play the NFC East, so they got they're Washington and then Cowboys and those teams. So I think that's going to be a big help this season when you look at schedule, because last year they had to play the Packers and Lions and all the NFC North. So that should help out a lot. As far as the roster, kind of similar to the Titans in that when Titans lost Wayne, for most teams that'd be a big loss. When you look at the Broncos, Champ Bailey retired. For a lot of teams that'd be a huge loss, but the secondary still ranks pretty well as far as talent. So I think they'll be okay. As far as, I mean, when you look at, and the other thing, as far as going from 10 wins to 14 wins on top of the schedule, this team did really well, they did really bad last year as far as turnovers. They had 29th in fumbles lost and 25th interceptions thrown. So I think there's going to be a little better play there as far as turnovers. I think they'll kind of go back to the average a bit. I don't think they'll be that bad again. So I do see them improving.
Yep, fair assessment, and I think, as you said, the interceptions and turnover ratio was what pretty much killed them last year. It wasn't necessarily the rest of their game. If that returns to average, they certainly should make that step up with that strength of schedule as well. And then I guess the surprising thing that I noted down on this division in your preview was that you have the Raiders jumping up from being probably the dweller of this division to possibly competing for that second slot in here. Huge jump here, Zach. What's your thinking around this?
Yeah, it was really a kind of a toss-up between them and the Chiefs. I do like the Raiders. I think it's going to be a challenge to get in the 7 wins, but we'll see. I like the Manning acquisition. I think it's really going to kind of bump up this team when you look at their offense. This is going to be one of the funner offenses to watch this year. You got Peyton Manning, you got Marshawn Lynch. It's going to be pretty. I think they're going to put up points this year. They may not rank in the top 10, but I think they'll get pretty close. And then, kind of similar to the Broncos, they have the 30th strength of schedule, so it should ease up a lot from last year. They again get the NFC East, so that's going to be 4 very winnable games there. As far as them over the Chiefs, I think they're 2 pretty even teams. I'm not really going to, get into it too much because I don't think there's a big difference between the two as far as projected records. But I just like this offense. I think they're going to be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a real fun offense to watch. You can also probably talk to the fact that Hogan, their rookie last year, had over 1,000, receiving yards, which is huge. That shows they've got a wide receiver who can take some of that load if they need it. But I'm just really interested to see a team that has the likes of Manning and Lynch, and whether Lynch can try and set a record for rushing yards, because when he started being utilized properly last year, he got very, very close to Peterson towards the end of the season. And I'm just going to be interested to see that little mini competition play out this year.
Yeah, that should be fun. I mean, Lynch was so good last year, even without a good quarterback. So it's going to be harder for teams just to game plan to stop the run this year. So he could be even better this year. Yeah,
absolutely. Then we move on to the third team you have listed down this division, which was the Chiefs. And you kind of said the Chiefs and the Raiders are probably going to be similar, in terms of record and competing. But again, the Chiefs have dropped off. I mean, if I look at them a couple of seasons ago, they were probably nearly pushing the door, probably a comfortable, second place in this division. The question at that time was whether they could make the step up and really compete with the Broncos. But they've fallen away a little bit here. And what's your assessment of that, with competing with the Raiders now for that second place, possibly?
Yeah, they're really polar opposites as far as the Raiders, and that they're kind of all defense, no offense. Not necessarily one's better than the other, but it'll be interesting, especially when they face each other, to kind of see who wins. And then as far as the talent, I'm just not really too big on this offense from a talent perspective by itself, and then also just from how they did last year. Obviously, former Packer Pat Devlin, he gets a lot of right. So I mean, he's a former 7th-round pick, so to be where he is quite a story. But even with him, this passing offense really just hasn't done a whole lot as far as kind of how they play. So I just don't have a lot of faith that they're going to be dangerous enough to do much.
I guess similar to some of the other teams in this conference, do you feel that the quarterback play is holding back the Chiefs, or are there other things that are, other things that are being papered over because of the fact everyone looks at Devlin, that are holding the Chiefs back from being a comfortable wild card team?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really have any talent around him. I don't think Devlin's been necessarily a good quarterback as far as, I don't think he's ranked in the top 15 in most categories, but this offensive line, this wide receiver core, really this whole offense doesn't have a lot of talent. So obviously you can't just put it on the quarterback here. This whole offense really kind of lacks the talent needed, especially when they have to face some of the tougher defenses in the league. It seems like they get shut out or, really kind of get held back points wise.
No, I think that's fair. And I think they've got some interesting cap challenges ahead of them that are going to be interesting just on a paper sheet, perspective, to see how that plays out for them as well, because they are paying a large amount for some of that offense that's not necessarily performing at the moment.
Yeah, and as far as the defense, it feels like at one time this was one of the better defenses in the league, and while they're still good, I just don't know if they're good enough to make up for that offense. I think they'll kind of be in that 10 to 15 range, but I think they are kind of falling off the team that was once a kind of a lock for a top 10 defense.
Yeah, no, fair assessment there, I think. And then we move on to the team that at the bottom of this division on your projection here, which is the LA Chargers. They've had a really good offseason, though, Zach. So why do you feel they're still down the bottom of this the American West?
I'm not really. I think part of it has to do with the Raiders. I think I have the Raiders beating them twice. I still think I like the Raiders a little bit more than the Chargers. The Chargers are kind of hard to figure out as well, that they rank well offensively as far as kind of offensive talent, but they didn't seem to do well at all last year. I think they're 25th in points scored. So I'm kind of, you can look at their offense from kind of who they have on the roster, but it doesn't seem like they've been able to do a lot with it. So I'm not really too sure what to make out of that. And then their defense ranks is probably one of the worst in the league. So that's a big worry there.
Yeah, for me, the offense, I think, is I think is going to be unlocked this year by two simple acquisitions that they've made: Ryan Matthews and Donald Penn. They've managed to get a tackle in who can. He's not as good as McNeil, let's be honest, but someone who can fill that role adequately enough. And Ryan Matthews, in terms of the running back, an elite running back, to try and bring them back up to at least league average in rushing, is probably going to open up some of that receiving opportunity that they probably haven't had previously. So I see them making a little bit more of a step change here on offense because of the talent and because of the fact it's a bit more balanced now. As you said, though, on defense is a slightly different story, which is probably holding them back at this point. And yeah, completely agree that it's a toss-up really, because you've got the likes of Oakland, Kansas, LA all playing each other because of the interdivisional games, and whoever comes out on those will probably bump above each other. Could be a complete mix-up. They could go 1-1 all against each other, and then it comes down to the other out-of-division games. I don't know, but do you feel the Chargers are making the right progression when you look at them from this year to last year? I mean, their off-season, the game was fantastic this year in terms of talent acquisition. Do you feel that they are making that step change?
Yeah, I mean, I really think the offense should rank. I mean, if they hit their potential, they should do. I mean, I think every bit as good as the Raiders. So I think there's talent to work with there. I think they're headed, as far as building a roster, they're heading in the right direction. I think it's just a matter of kind of translating that to actual results on the field. If they can do that, then they'll be on their way up.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting to know. And then let's move on then. So we've looked at all of the divisions. Once we've looked at all the divisions, of course, Zach, we have to look at what your predictions are and your outlook. We've given your summary here in terms of projection, in terms of what the records are. So, I mean, pretty much off the bat, you've got the Broncos, the Titans, the Pats, the Ravens all taking their division. Then the Jets and I believe the Colts slipping in there as well, in terms of how it looks. But this is the interesting bit, is your playoff prediction here. So would you like to just talk us through this, because this is fascinating in the sense that you have someone else coming through this AFC this year?
Yeah, the playoff predictions always try to have a little fun in that it's impossible to try to figure out who's going to come out. Seems like every season is different. And as far as when you look at the AFC, I mean, the Broncos, I think, have the easiest road to the 1 seed. You look at their schedule versus the Titans' schedule, even though if you're just looking at who I think is the best team, I think the Titans are still the best team in the conference. But I haven't predicted as a 2 seed, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they have a wild card and maybe get the 3 seed and the Patriots slip in there as a 2 seed or something. So the point being, I think the Broncos have the easiest road to the 1 seed home field advantage. And I think that might be enough to kind of help them slip through the AFC and be maybe just enough of a benefit to them to help them top some of the other competition. And, I think the Colts, I think the Ravens are kind of getting overshadowed here. I think they'll be just as good as everyone else. I don't think there's
let's come back. So you talked about the Broncos going through because of their seeded record. They'll obviously only have to play the 2 games. That'll probably get them through, is what you're saying here. But there's some really interesting things in this breakdown here that I really want to pick your brains with. So you obviously got the Ravens and the Colts, getting through in terms of 4 and 5, and then you've got the Colts coming through that matchup. What's your thought process behind that one, where you obviously talked about the Ravens probably being better than most people predicted last year? What made you sort of make the Colts still have the edge over the Ravens?
I mean, a little bit. It's just kind of throw in one upset there, right? I don't know if I'm going to try to sit here and say the Colts are better than the Ravens. I think something could happen there. Maybe the Ravens are looking ahead at the Titans and Broncos and not paying attention to the Colts. I don't know, but I think the Colts could be dangerous in the playoffs. As their kind of defense, their defense has some young playmakers on there, so they kind of develop throughout the year and they figure out their defense. I think they could be a little more dangerous late in the season and kind of get better throughout the year. But it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting observation and prediction there. And then you've obviously got the Jets and the Patriots. I'm guessing you're thinking the Patriots' talent will just carry them through in that matchup. But then you've got the Titans against the Patriots in sort of that next game there, and you have the Patriots coming through. Is it talent over strategy, or is it a case of something else you're seeing there?
I'm not too confident I'll be right, but I'm sort of kind of betting that maybe the Patriots kind of get it figured out this year, and they kind of finally live up to their roster talent. That's kind of what I'm betting on. So we'll see if it actually happens or not. Hopefully Rizzo doesn't let me down or anything, but that's really what it comes down to. I'm just kind of betting that maybe they kind of figure it out, and Russell Wilson kind of becomes, as far as numbers wise, becomes one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and they kind of get rolling.
Yeah. So you see kind of Russell Wilson maybe making a statement this year, is what you're saying. We'll
Yeah,
hopefully bring the Patriots up.
Yeah, so I think the Jets are probably one of those teams that just maybe not really ready to compete in the playoffs. I think they'll be a nice story. I think they'll play well in the regular season, but when they kind of face the better teams, I think that defense will be exposed.
Yeah, I can see that as well. And then finally, let's just have a little look. So you obviously talked about the Broncos coming through in the AFC, but obviously we'll play the conference game against the Patriots in your prediction here. Interested to understand, Wilson will have, what we're saying is probably would have expected at this point on your predictions to be performing very well, but you still have the Broncos coming out on top in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I guess I didn't have the guts to put the Patriots all the way to the AFC Championship. I actually did have the Patriots as the winner at one point and switched to the Broncos. I think the Broncos, like I mentioned, they'll have the 1 seed or the easiest road to the 1 seed, and if they get that, then I think the home field advantage will be just enough to put them over the top. And then we'll see. I think it'll be a good matchup. If the Broncos did face the Patriots, I think the Broncos would come out on top though.
Yeah, interesting to see the Broncos coming back to being elite status this year from where last year they certainly weren't there with the turnover game that we talked about. So yeah, interesting you have the Broncos coming through.
I think if they can figure out the turnover thing, they could be. It's kind of scary where they were last year with that bad a turnover margin. I'm kind of interested to see if they get that figured out. They could be pretty scary team to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll stop at this point. We don't want to know whether the Broncos are on your Super Bowl predictions being the champions. We'll have to hold that one off until the end of the NFC predictions and NFC preview. But yeah, Zach, it's been great to have you on to get your season preview. As always, these are fantastic. So if anyone hasn't seen these yet, go and look at the article talk on our Discord channel. They're all linked up there, and you can see full breakdowns for all the different divisions so far. But as always, it's great to get your thoughts, on the podcast, and see your predictions and talk through them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying being on, and it's always fun kind of going through this. I hope I haven't made any teams too mad or anything about projections, but nothing personal there at all. So I think it's going to be interesting as far as the AFC. I think the Broncos are the favorites, but we'll see. And then I should have the NFC and AFC full preview posted together here soon with the full playoff projections.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll certainly get you back on before the start of the season to run through that and to look at in terms of who you're predicting to be the CSFL Super Bowl winner this year. Will it be the Broncos or will it be someone else coming out of the NFC? But we'll certainly find out on the next show.
Look forward to it.